The Aventador replacement is here, and that is of course a Lamborghini Revuelto. So what I want to do in this video is show you why I still think the Aventador is the better design when it comes to pure Lamborghini DNA. So I'm going to compare the new Revuelto to the Aventador from a front, side, rear, interior, and I also want to show you a couple of really cool design sketches, official design sketches from Lamborghini throughout the process when they were developing the Revuelto. But before we do that, let's have a look at this article from carbuzz.com. I'm going to link that down in the description. Go through some key things here. For example, the Revuelto uses a more conventional lithium-ion battery to create Lamborghini's first high-performance electrified vehicle with a brand new V12 and 3 electric motors. The Revuelto makes over 1,000 horsepower combined, which is completely nuts. The release date for the Revuelto is expected to be later 2023 as a 2024 model, following its reveal in March this year. As for Lambo rivals, Ferrari already have a high-powered hybrid supercar in the form of the SF90 Stradale. It also has 3 electric motors, but a twin-turbo V8 instead of the V12 that you have here in the Lambo. Although the SF90 Stradale just about falls short of the magic 1,000 horsepower mark. However, they're pretty much the same time, 0 to 60. Lamborghini's head of design says that the Revuelto is adrenaline made visible. The shape is perhaps too busy to be called beautiful, they say here in the article, and this is what I want to talk about when we have a look at this design in more detail in just a minute. The proportions based on a single longitudinal line echoes those of the 1971 Countach prototype. There are touches of the Diablo, and the inclined front harks back to the Murcielago. You can see some of that right here. This reminds me, if we just have a body color piece right here and some body color down here as a bumper, it would pretty much be the same shape down here as on the Murcielago, the first one, the non-SV, just the original one. So the wheel setup, you have a staggered setup here with 20-inch wheels in front and 21s in the back, and the V12 is fully exposed like the work of art that it is, and it leads to the twin hexagonal shaped tailpipes. These are positioned between the taillights with a Y shape that mirrors the front DRLs, and I think this is really cool. This is something that when I was in school, design school in Italy in 2010-11, they actually had, the previous year students had a design like this in the clay model that looked almost exactly like this. And that student is actually been with Lamborghini since 2012, and he has done some of these sketches that we're going to have a look at in just a minute. So very cool to see a student that was a year before me, or a couple of years before me. They had those old clay models in the design university on display, and one of those models looked very similar to this, and now this 10 years later, that clay model came into reality with these graphics in the rear end. Very cool to see. Lamborghini has been able to boost the aerodynamic load by 33% in the front and 74% at the back compared to the Aventador. Customers will also be able to choose between 400 bodywork colors for the Revuelto, which is a lot of colors. It would be very hard to pick one out of 400. You have a 6.5-liter naturally aspirated V12, the most powerful and the lightest 12-cylinder engine ever from Lamborghini. It produces 814 horsepower and 535 pound-feet of torque. You also have 4-wheel drive. 2 new electric motors have been added to the front axle, so you have a 4-wheel drive system. The V12 and the third engine drives the rear wheels. You have no power from the V12 itself to the front engine. That is all produced by 2 electric engines in the front end. 0 to 60 is about 2.5 seconds, and the top speed is claimed to be 217 miles per hour. So this is a beast of a Lamborghini. We wouldn't expect anything else. I mean, come on, it's a Lamborghini. You have to have these crazy numbers and also these crazy shapes. So let's have a look at this design here in Photoshop. We're going to compare it to as I said, to the Aventador and just have a look at what's going on here. So here we have, I want to show you these sketches to start with. I do really like this interior because we do have, I think this is a 9-inch display for the passengers. You have a 12.3 digital gauge cluster that looks to have some sort of housing to it, and is beautifully integrated in the dash itself. It looks like a pretty traditional integration, even though it's fully digital. And then you have this infotainment screen in the middle that has this nice, beautiful Y shape in it, in the design. We're going to have a look at the real interior in a minute here as well. So I want to show you just the evolution from the Aventador to the new Revuelto and what they did to this interior, and I really like what I see so far with this interior. And further down, you can see these are some of the ideation sketches for this new Aventador replacement. And I think these are very beautiful sketches because you can see the clear Lamborghini DNA with this one single roof line up here. You have the shoulder line cutting into the center, going into the big air vent, and you have this big muscle over the rear end. And this is the person, the student, that was actually studying at the same school that I was studying in, as I said, 2 years before me, or a couple of years. I don't really know exactly what year he graduated. But as you can see, he's now a part of the Lamborghini design team. And it feels like a lot of the model that he created in school, a lot of those features are now coming back here in the production version. There must be a great feeling as a design student to 10 years later actually have your ideas that you had as a student implemented in the actual Aventador replacement. Very, very cool. And this is the Lamborghini design boss sketches right here. I love his style of sketching. This feels very analog, and I'm happy to see that designers are still using traditional pen and paper to sketch out their ideas. And you can see the Lamborghini DNA here with the shoulder line of the Countach, the Diablo, the Murcielago, the Aventador, and then coming back a little bit more complex in the Revuelto down here, but it still feels clearly Lamborghini, specifically with the roof line that goes in one single curvature going down over the front end. And I also love the wheel designs that we have on Lamborghinis these days. These wheels are just absolutely gorgeous. Here you can see a more rendered out sketch of the same car with the same color, of course, that we have in the top sketches up here with the key lines going through the car. And then we have this pretty like zigzaggy shape for the intakes in the sides. I'm not sure what I think about that. I'm going to let you know why right now when we jump into the real thing. So up top, of course, we do have the Lamborghini Aventador. I still today, looking at this Aventador, I still think it looks absolutely incredible, and it looks like a modern design to me. Still, it could be a 2023 model because we do have all the features, and it looks like the manufacturing methods would still work today. They still look up to date with all these curves and sharp lines that we have in the Aventador. The front end looks absolutely gorgeous. I do love how these headlights are the same type of shape that we have all over this car with this hexagonal shape of the headlight itself. You can clearly see that we have the Lamborghini DNA line of the two lines in the hood going from wide in the bottom of the front end and then going into a narrower feel at the top and the closer it goes to the windshield. These are two lines that is typical Lamborghini DNA. You're gonna see that they're still intact in the new Revuelto as well. And you can see the front end very clean, and this is the LP700. This is just the first generation that came out in 2011. Basically the original one that I actually saw being unveiled in Geneva. I think that was in 2011. So looking at this one down here, the new Revuelto down at the bottom, look at these hood lines. We still have them be intact, going from wide at the bottom, as you can see right here, into a narrower feel up top closer to the windshield. So that DNA line is still intact, and we already knew that this was going to happen for the Aventador replacement, to have these Y-shaped. I actually sketched that out. I don't know when it was when I made a quick sketch of what I thought the new Aventador replacement would look like, and I sketched in these Y-shaped lights, as you can see here, because it was pretty clear with the cyan and everything coming out that they would actually put that in the Aventador replacement. However, you have the headlights up here, which is fine. You have the intake being down here, which is also fine. I do love these fins sticking out in a very classic, traditional Lamborghini way. However, if you look at the overall area that is black, I think maybe it's a little too big. So the black features take up too much space into the, and carves too far into the hood here. I would like to shrink it down just a little bit so we have more body color in the front end. These now look like there's a massive hole in the front end. I think that's the purpose of this design. Now, having a look at the side view, and this is where you can, it's clear to me which one is the more beautiful design here, and it's gonna be the Aventador for a couple of reasons. First of all, the main reason being the shoulder line. So let's have a look at the shoulder line, how beautifully it starts. You can see how it starts in this peak right at the nose, the very sharp nose of the Aventador, and then goes right into the front axle, fades in this area. So you have a nice fade shape right here, line that doesn't cut sharply into this area. It fades before it meets the wheel arch, and then comes back in the exact same line, going up here, and then slowly curves down into this area. I absolutely love this line because if you look at it like this from a side view, it gives it a clear forward motion, and it looks like it just want to take off. And then of course you do have the classic Lamborghini line, that is the roof line that goes basically in one single curvature like this into the front end, and the lower section down here very beautifully done as well. And I also like that we have a little bit more dynamic in the Aventador side intake, because here we have different angles. This is a different angle than what we have here. So we could have moved this corner down to this section here and make it pretty static by having it like this. And that's exactly what happened in the Revuelto. It feels less dynamic to me because these have almost the same angles of these two lines. And if we put a midsection like this, a cut line right in the middle, you can see that the lines of the intakes themselves, they stick pretty much as far out on each side of this center line. So you have the same stretch of the intake right here that we have right here, and you can see that it is 50-50 now, so it meets right in the middle. If we do the same thing on the Aventador, for example, we put a center line, let's say right here, where it meets this corner and where it meets this corner, you can see that it doesn't stretch as far this way. It stretches way further. The shading and the features of the intake stretches way further on this side, again moving the car forward. And also you have a different proportions between the top intake right here being about 20%, and then you have the height of the lower intake here being maybe 80% of the height, whereas here you see that we have almost a 40-60 split between the height of the intakes. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but overall what I'm trying to say here is that I think the side of both these cars, I do prefer the Aventador because it just has more dynamic feeling to it. Last but not least, one thing that I definitely think the Aventador does better is the rear end, specifically here from a side view, because have a look at this sharp line that just goes right in and has the same kind of fade right here as we have in the front end. This is just a beautiful touch to me, and I think it looks fantastic and adds some more dynamic to it. And again, you have all these lines, this line going down, you have the shoulder line going down, and you have the front end going down as well. Everything is pointing downwards, and I love that about the Aventador. But look at the Revuelto here. You don't have the same movement in the rear end, facing downwards and looking angry. Instead, it's pointing upwards. And I think this doesn't have the same dynamic feeling again like we have in the Aventador up here. It's still a pretty cool looking design, but overall, if I were to pick one of these two, it would definitely be the Aventador when it comes to beauty of the lines and the line flow in the cars. Now have a look at the rear end. This is a very cool design by Lamborghini, the new Revuelto, because I wouldn't call it beautiful, it's just an awesome looking rear end. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad looking rear end, but it doesn't have the same type of, I wouldn't call it elegance in the Aventador either. But what I do like about the Aventador, same thing here, we have this psychopath angles of the taillights. They're angling downwards. And have a look at this too, the side view of the intakes on the side when they're not deployed, they're pointing downwards, creating this very muscly shoulder neck feeling of the rear end of the Aventador. Everything here is solid, while in the new Revuelto you do have this beautiful wing. You can see that it is a hole here, so air flows in here and through this area, and this thing connects to the bodywork. It's a very complex design, this rear end. What I do love about it though is that they decided to add the big exhaust pipes right up here, right in line with the Y-shaped design that we have in the taillights. And have a look at how much farther up the diffuser now sticks in this car. It's just insane. It sticks further up than halfway up the rear end, and on top of that they moved up the exhaust pipes to have them be centered, while in Aventador it sits down here right in the middle. Still very huge, and you do have 4 different pipes in here that hides in the darkness, which you can't really see right now. Both of these, of course, plantedness when it comes to Lamborghini. Few car manufacturers does that better, because we still have the traps of the Revuelto being intact like we have in the Aventador. And have a look at these massive tires just sumo squatting both of these cars properly on the ground. Now, last but not least, let's have a look at this brand new interior by Lamborghini. The old Aventador still looks very good to me. I do love the housing that we have here for the gauge cluster. Looks very nice with the carbon fiber, and then you have the leather in the back. You also have this stack of buttons in the middle and the center display. Look at this control panel and just how cool this looks. However, in the new one, in the Revuelto, they made it a little bit more organic with this shape that I showed you in the sketches going down, creating a beautiful waterfall to house this now all digital gauge cluster infotainment screen. I'm not sure if I prefer this over these buttons. I think these buttons just look so cool, and they're also, of course, physical buttons. But at the same time, I'm really glad that Lamborghini decided to house the gauge cluster in a pretty weird looking housing. I have to see this in real life to figure out just the shapes of this thing, but it does look like I have a cap for it, and it also looks still very traditional with the layout and the positioning of everything. And I do think the infotainment screen is beautifully integrated in this design. And then, of course, following here, you do have this little display for the passengers as well. Overall, a fantastic design, again, by Lamborghini, of course. But if I were to pick one to be the more beautiful design, it's gonna have to be the Aventador.